Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me as always is my co-host, Aaron. Say hi.
Hi, I'm very uncomfortable.
Why are you uncomfortable?
I don't know. For some reason, I cannot sit properly.
All right, I thought you were going to say, it's really early nerves. We're only 4 seasons in, episode what? In this lot, this is what, episode 44.
Stage fright.
So yeah, it's real stage fright still going on there. Yeah.
It's just setting in. I'm just that slow.
Yeah, it's just occurred to you.
Do you remember like the old like Pokemon where there was like Slowpoke and it would take him ages to feel anything?
It's only been 4 years, Aaron.
It's been 4 years and finally stage nerves are set in. No, I don't know what it is, and hopefully this won't be too evident throughout the video format of this podcast. I can't seem to find a comfortable way to sit today.
Fair enough.
I've got like ants in my pants, fidgety.
Oh well, I mean, it could be worse.
It could be. I could actually have like fire ants in my pants. That would be worse. Bullet ants.
If you've got bullet ants in this house, I'm there's a few questions I've got for you, but yeah. Well,
you don't know that
other
I'm
than
secretly
hiding
Ant-Man.
Other than hiding South American ant species in the house, what else have you been up to?
I tell you what I have done successfully. I saw the Northern Lights again.
I missed out on that again.
I tell you what, it's double success because this time I managed to keep Atta awake, and she suggested going out to see it.
Good.
So yeah, so she's finally seen it. To the naked eye, it was a very, very vague hint of a pinkish coloration to the sky.
Yeah.
But as soon as you got the camera out on long exposure, you could see it. The photos were all right. I'll put them up behind me. They weren't the best. I think last time I saw it, it was definitely a better show. But just on that point, there's a couple things that have been grinding my gears this week. Firstly, the Northern Lights.
Why can't you be brighter? Why can't you be up at like a specific time that I want?
People keep saying that, firstly, it's been incredible to see people actually engaging in the cosmic environment.
Yeah.
And seeing people interested in the natural universe. So that's been really, really cool. But you do get these people who are like, oh, it's boring. You can't really see much. So most of the time you can't really see much with the Northern Lights. Most of the time to see these stunning like views that people get, they
have to go to Greenland.
Yes, and even then put your camera on long exposure a lot of the time. It's the same with stars. That people have no patience for stargazing because they're expecting to see the Milky Way the moment they get out there. Which, I mean, obviously you see stars of the Milky Way, but you have to wait out there for a while for your eyes to adjust.
Yeah.
And that's, even then you rely on having a dark enough sky, and even then you're better off with a camera on long exposure to see the actual arm of it. The other thing that I've seen online is so speaking of aurochs, actually, Taurus are being
the Taurus project.
Yeah, there's going to be some released into the UK.
Nice.
Now that would normally go under news, but I wanted to talk about it specifically, just very quickly here, because people, namely farmers, are complaining, why is this such a good thing and why is our cow such a bad thing? Well, that would be because most of your cows are locked up inside in these massive sheds for almost the entire year and not actually going out there on the grass, kind of nipping at whatever kind of barren plant life there is out there in green fields, and pooing, feeding dung beetles and all manner of other things. They're as a bovid, their role in the ecosystem has been completely removed. And that's why Tauruses are important. Well, also, the size, the horns, and everything of the Taurus, they help it serve as a bit of an ecosystem engineer as well.
I mean, it's more the fact that you could have a field full of cows, but there's way too many cows in way too small a space,
and they're not migrating anywhere,
moving through an area.
No,
they're not conservation grazing. Oh. So that would be why. I mean, I think what the challenge should be then in that case is go, okay, your cows are definitely up there. Let's have herds of Jerseys and Frisians just roaming through. But you're going to have to turn your land into conservation grazing sort of land,
Yeah.
and rewild the whole place and use your cattle as the ecosystem engineers.
If you want your Frisian dairy cattle,
I'd be totally up for going.
Frisian cattle are the dairy ones. They are.
Yeah,
Aren't they?
they're
If you want
black
your,
and white cow,
or your Jersey Gold top producing cow to be out there when we won't, unfortunately, because the country's backward. But let's just say you want your Jersey cattle out there, fine. Wait to hear them complain when we put wolves out there.
That's very true.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than that,
I mean, you can definitely use domestic cow species for conservation grazing, because they use belted Galloways, which are a fantastic little breed for and Highland cattle.
I was going to say, haven't they used Highland coos?
Because they just look stunning.
They're cool animals. Yeah.
There's very few cows that look better than a Highland cow.
I did have, unrelated to this, I did have one failure, but I'll come on to that in the news.
Okay.
So what have you been up to?
As you can see, I'm wearing a lovely prototype T-shirt.
It is. It stands out very well because, like I say, the bird is sized really well. I think.
Yeah,
it really stands out.
For those
I'm
of you
looking at the camera.
For those of you who recognise it, it is Charlie, my Indian ringneck, who's long since since this year passed, but was also the artwork that Drew did for our Indian ringneck creature feature.
Charlie was the mascot for that.
Yeah. And I've been meaning to try out this. Well, this was a prototype made by a local company that I wanted to see how they do, because we do use T-Mill as where you can get a hold of all of your T-shirts and things. But I thought I'd try a prototype one out just to quickly get it made and see what it would look like. I'm kind
you happy with it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it works really well on the blue. I'm not often one for a light blue shirt, but I think it makes the yellow work quite nicely.
It does. The contrast is good. Drew once said, "Go for opposites," didn't he? And it does work.
I sat there for ages trying all these different combinations of colours and looking at it, and thought, yeah, no, it's gonna have to be blue. But
I suppose the important thing, really, though, is the print quality and the shirt quality.
It looks pretty good. Yeah. I mean, it's a nice shirt as well. It's not one that's too small or too big or anything. So, yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with this. Apart from that, what else? Oh, loads of plant stuff. I've been taking cuttings and putting a lot of them. I've been getting a lot of plants into the top of fish tanks this week.
Nice.
Just really packing them out. We've got one that we've set up for the pufferfish, which we were talking about last week. The tank is set up for breeding snails to feed the pufferfish. Okay. And the back of it is it's one that's got what should have, it's a very old tank that's secondhand, should have all the spaces to put in filter medium and a pump and everything, and actually have an internal sort of filtration behind a wall at the back of the tank. That's all long since gone, but it makes the perfect nice little planting areas for loads of plants at the back that now overhang the front of this tank. It's just full of snails, but it just looks really nice, and it's a nice place for cultivating plants on the side. I think that's I don't think I've had too many other wildlife or animal encounters.
Sums up our weeks then.
Yeah, it's been a lot of teaching and a lot of preparing of lessons and things. I've got to talk about avian digestion today, which is one of my favorite bits to start teaching people. And I had Camilla, as I've called her, the chicken model, one of those anatomy models you take the side off, and you've got all the bits, trying to put it back in. It never goes back in as easily as you think it's going to. And you know where the bits go, but it just doesn't want to. And you just like, okay, just put that in. And then the egg fell out and rolled across the room. And I was like, well, this is how we build a chicken, everyone. So, yeah. So I was then wandering around the college between different lessons before going back to the office with a chicken model under my arm. I must have looked like a bit of a weirdo. Yeah.
Oh.
Shall we go into the news?
Let's do it.
It's the news!
So I'm going to start things off with a relatively, probably quite unheard of bit of news that's not come from any particular news source other than the Welsh Mountain Zoo's website and Facebook page.
Right.
And it's a bit of a connection because it's an animal that I used to really like looking after that collection. And that's See You Later, Alligator.
Right.
So since 1990, Nancy the American alligator has been a much-loved part of the Welsh Mountain Zoo. However, after 34 years, she's not dead, I'd like to point out.
All right. Okay.
Is now time to say goodbye, and she's being moved to another zoological collection in the UK as part of ongoing commitment to upgrading the site. So I would say this is something that had been talked about for a long time, even when I was there a very long time ago.
This is bittersweet, then.
Yeah,
it's sad, but it's for a great good.
Yeah, she's a lovely alligator, in that she wants to try and eat you.
I think she's stunning alligator.
Yeah, and I mean, as you may know, I do like alligators more than most other crocodilians. It goes alligator, Chinese alligator, saltwater crocodile in my mind. So I'm firmly more pro alligator than crocodile. But yeah, it's. I wonder what collection she's off to. I haven't actually been able to get a confirmation on that one. But yeah, Nancy the alligator is leaving the Welsh Mountain Zoo, which is kind of sad. But if she's getting a bigger enclosure, bigger and better, that's always better.
When's the last time people can see her in Wales?
Not sure. It doesn't actually say on the post that I've got from. But I assume if it's not already closed to the public in that sense, her house, it will be relatively soon. So if you're anywhere near Colwyn Bay, obviously go and check out to see if you can still see Nancy. But yeah, fantastic creature.
Yeah, she really is. Yeah. My first article comes to us from The Standard, and the headline is "Zombie Fungus That Inspired The Last of Us Discovered in UK." Well, we're all getting closer to our spooky spectacular with Phil Barber of Incredible Inverts, so it makes sense to have a spooky story or two to share. Spotted in Scotland just 10 times in the last 7 decades, the Gibellula fungus is very similar to the cordyceps that we covered last Halloween.
Yeah.
And of course, of The Last of Us fame. But don't worry, the fungus only parasitizes spiders, zombifying its victim as they grow to digest the arachnid's body before using it essentially as a spore dispenser.
Nice. Very cool that you say that. I've seen a fungus that basically turns spiders, especially cellar spiders, those ones that you tend to get in any kind of room or under the cupboard or something like that, turns them into what looks like a blob of, it's almost like you've dipped them in white paint, which is another kind of fungus that attacks spiders, and it seemed to be cellar spiders more than a lot of others. So my next story is from the new Blackmore Vale magazine, which is another quite hyper-localized one. This one around Lyme Regis, Dorset Way. So a dolphin who ended up on the Dorset coast after being battered by a storm has been successfully refloated. Medics from the British Divers Marine Life Rescue, or the BDMLR, which are a really good group that basically are like first responders for any sort of marine stranding. They're a charity that basically work all over the UK, but they were one of the first to get to the beach of Lyme Regis on Tuesday after reports that the mammal had been washed up and got stranded. Struggling to get down to the scene, however, because the weather was that bad. Although I don't think we had it anywhere near as bad up here.
No.
We really had
that bad.
Decent weather compared to a lot of the country.
So thank you, South Coast, for defending us.
Just taking all of the brunt of it. So they got there and found the dolphin was basically stranded up on shore. They managed to refloat the dolphin at a different beach, mostly because the conditions had got that bad and there were landslips occurring all around. It's making it sound like some sort of action film.
We need to go down there fossil hunting then.
Well, yeah. They ended up having to take it to a different beach a bit further down the road. It was successfully refloated out and returned back to the wild.
Oh, well, good job, guys.
Yeah.
That's really great. And my next article comes to us from BBC, and the headline is, it's a little misleading for what we're going to talk about, but How to spot comet of the century in UK skies. Now, this one is a bit misleading because it's coming to you guys a week late. And so now the comet has completely gone. But I wanted to mention it because it was one of it was my failure that I alluded to in the intro. I tried to have a gander at it, and unfortunately, partially due to weather, partially due to me misreading direction, I missed it. But yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't as well promoted as other cosmic events that have happened this year so far. So by the time many of us scrambled to see the thing, it long past.
since gone.
I actually said its final goodbyes to the UK and to Earth at about 4 a.m. on Sunday morning, I think it was. But look how online. The reason why I've included it anyway is because whilst I can't give you any photos myself, please do go online and have a look at some of the stunning photos that were taken by citizen stargazers and stuff of the Sushinshan Atlas C 2023 A3 comet.
It just rolls off the tongue.
It does. However, because it rolls off the tongue so much, me and Atta went into a bit of a deep dive, and now I can read comet names. I know what they mean.
Okay. Well, my next one, I've got a spooky one. For you as well, actually.
Spooky.
So it's from the BBC. Animals dug up remains from graveyard, police say. This is actually kind of like a little bit disturbing for obviously the children that found the human remains.
Oh, jeez.
So it would appear Greater Manchester Police went to Park Road near Duncanfield Graveyard in Tameside on Saturday. The local correspondent website, the local newspaper, reported that bones had been found by playing children. So
kids are playing in a graveyard.
I mean, it depends, really.
Wednesday Addams.
Yeah, you never know. I got to admit, when I was a little kid, we used to occasionally go through the graveyard because it was a way of cutting through.
Oh yeah, we go through a graveyard to get from point A to point B. But...
We used to go through a place called what was it? The Devil's Cauldron, and which is just like one of these depressions in a forest, and the Witching Hill. There you go. The town that I grew up in before moving to Australia was the setting of the witch's coven in Macbeth.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So that should be able. We can work that one out now. Also, there was a hill called the Witching Hill, which is the big hill in the town, and they used to have a fun way of deciphering whether you're a witch or not. It's a very fair method. None of this, dunking you in water
like
or
a duck pool.
Oh yeah, none of that. I mean that's
amateur.
That's awful. No, they'd put you in a barrel with spikes on the inside and roll you down the hill. If you survived, you're a witch. If not, you were a blended.
Oh, I've never heard of that one.
Did it properly in Scotland. It's I can always remember learning about that in school and just going, okay.
Those Christians, they're good people.
Do it properly in Scotland or don't do it at all. But anyway, we didn't find any human remains, I'll say that much. But back to the news story. The investigation found that there was no criminality involved, and the remains had basically from a historical burial site that had most likely been disturbed by wildlife. So essentially, a badger's probably dug underneath it, or a fox has dug underneath it and turfed out these quite old bones. So thankfully, no one's been murdered, and these children haven't found sort of a crime scene. They've basically been on an episode of The Animals of Farthing Wood meets Time Team.
Yeah, I was going to say Time Team. Yeah, very good. My next article comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, which I don't think we've ever used.
I don't think we've ever
probably will never use again. But there you go. And this is the news that alligators displaced by Milton are turning up in unexpected places. So another spooky one, but nothing to laugh at this time, unfortunately. The horrors of the colossal storm Milton keep coming as people trying to flee or salvage their homes are finding alligators in their backyards, garages, and often
want a free alligator.
Can you imagine if it's just a baby?
Oh,
Yes, I'll take
I
that.
want a free alligator.
House trained alligator. Yeah, and unfortunately, in more areas of the house, and of course, garages themselves in many parts of America are actually part of the home with a door access straight into the home. So yeah, resident Floridians are being advised to keep their distance, but under the circumstances, unfortunately, the risk of human gator conflict ending in either species being harmed is probably quite high. So if we have any listeners out there, which I hope we do.
Well,
First and foremost, stay safe.
yes, I mean, you could probably miss out on listening to this episode if it
Yeah,
means
if
you
it's
getting out of there
if you're listening to this episode whilst living there, you
whilst
probably
paddling.
your priorities are probably a bit wrong.
Yeah. Send us any alligators you don't want. We'll have them. No, I gotta admit, we've started our news articles with an alligator and ended it with an alligator, to sort of bookend things in a very odd way.
Yeah, that's true. Because that just about wraps it up for the for the newsreel. We're going to head on into the main topic now, which is, of course, with you this week.
Yes, so not alligator-based news, but in fact wolf-based news.
Oh,
so
yeah?
also from the BBC.
Who's murdered a wolf in some weird and disgusting way this time?
Well, it definitely has been murdered, but quite a while ago. This is the news that animal remains could belong to England's last wolf. And that is the remains of there's a lot of quite very British place names in this, and trying to get all of the right ones correct and who's done what. So according to Cumbrian folklore, the last ever wolf in the country was killed at Humphrey's Head near Grange over Sands. Very, very English name, Grange over Sands, Humphrey's Head, in the 14th century. I'll try and not do the voice.
So carry on.
Animal bones found in 1987 and kept in an English heritage storage facility in Yorkshire have been examined to understand how this creature died exactly. So the bones themselves are clearly canid bones. They are either a dog or a wolf. So you've got a good choice of whether it is. And this is one of the main things they're trying to determine at the moment. Is this a dog? Is this a wolf? Is this supposedly the wolf that would have died in this very particular manner? The legend says that after a chase all the way from Humphrey Head to Coniston Fell and back again, Sir John Harrington of Wraithsholme shot the wolf in order to inherit his father's estate. Which I think we talked about this briefly before recording this, is possibly one of the oddest ways to gain your inheritance. Go out and shoot the last wolf in the country, would you? And then I'll give you stuff.
Or was it known at the time that there were not many wolves left, and so it was like a way of keeping him off the inheritance?
Yeah, you'll never get the inheritance.
Setting it is it which king was it that gave Heracles the impossible task? I can't remember.
Is it the Gordian knot?
Yeah, I can't remember. I'm ashamed to not remember.
But it's the Gordian knot, isn't it?
I don't remember.
Cutting anyway. But yeah, you could just see him sitting there going, "All right, lads, I've got this. I've sent my idiot son out to go and hunt the very last wolf. He doesn't know that there isn't any around, and he thinks he's going to get his inheritance."
I really hope that the guy was a complete idiot too. This is like backfired horrendously for this bloke.
Yeah, bringing back the very last wolf after chasing it down. So very sadly, this is potentially what was the last wolf in England. So scrapings have been sent off to basically determine whether it is a dog, a wolf, or a hybrid, because it's probably quite likely towards the end of there being wolves in England, that there would have indeed been hybrids floating around, because we get that today with feral dog populations. And so the bones were found at Fountains Abbey in North Yorkshire, and basically they date back to about 1540, so it puts them roughly in the right time period. And skeletons of wolves in the UK have been relatively or incredibly rare, actually, and they've almost become a mythical creature, which I would definitely say so in some aspects.
Yeah.
And I believe you said it a couple of weeks ago. Why on earth do we have all of these hypothetical, mythical big cats roaming around the UK, but no one ever seems to get as hyped over the thought about a mythical wolf roaming around the UK, which is far more likely if there was ever going to be anything like that. So yeah, there is the potential very much that this could have been the last wolf. Now, one thing I know both you and I like to talk about when we used to do wolf talks at the various collections that you and I have worked with, about the importance of wolves in ecosystems, and I know we've certainly talked about it on this podcast,
for sure,
more than a few times. And I always used to like to bring up the fact that wolves in the UK didn't just go extinct when the last wolf in England disappeared, because, well, England was first at wiping them out. And then it went Wales and Scotland.
They put bounties on their heads.
Yes.
So it was only a matter of time.
Well, at one point, I do find this an absolutely odd fact. There was talk of a Welsh king paying an English king, or a Welsh lord paying an English lord, with something like 10,000 wolf pelts. But there's also one occurrence that says it was actually 10,000 wolf tongues. So it's a bit like, okay, I mean, pelts I can understand. You can use those. What are you using wolf tongues for? I would like to make the most disgusting floppy coat in the
weird
world.
Trophy, isn't it?
I suppose it's more about trying to wipe them out. So the last wolf in Wales has also got a bit of a mythical story to it, how it disappeared as well. And that is, it was supposedly the last wolf was killed in Blythe Coed, which means wolf wood, or Blythe Ir Coed. It's a forested area on the edge of Eryri, Snowdon, so that national park. And that was in the 16th century. So it's long since disappeared, before the very last one in Scotland disappeared. So the last wolf in Scotland officially was indicated that it was killed by Sir Ewan Cameron of Loch Leal in 1680 in Killiecrankie, that's Perthshire. However, some have claimed that wolves survived in Scotland right up until the 18th century, which is actually something that I was more under the illusion that they'd survived up into the 18th century. And one apparently being shot as late as 1888. So that's that's quite late on. So yeah, hopefully, I don't know, we may see the return of wolves in the UK, and this has just become one of those weird pauses in our wildlife story, before bringing them back in. Like every other large, interesting and rare animal in the UK, we've just had to go through this phase of wiping it out before bringing it back.
I echo that sentiment. I really do hope we see a day where wolves come back to the UK, and not just the wolf either.
No. I mean, I think bears might be pushing it. We'll probably never see bears.
Bears are never pushing it.
Well, bears are cool, but
there's not enough bears in the world.
No, this is very true.
Every street should have a bear on it. Just stalking the street, looking for berries, not finding any. So,
eating the odd cat and small dog and child. Yeah. Oh dear. Anyway, should we move into our creature feature?
Yes. Let's do it quickly.
It's the creature feature.
Right, well, we're into this week's creature feature. Aaron, what are we looking at?
Well, this week, Gareth, we're looking at the forked leopard.
Okay.
Yeah.
No idea.
No, the Latin name for this is Furcifer pardalis.
Yes.
So that's where we get that from. And the name can actually be split in several ways. So furci meaning forked in Latin, and pardalis obviously kind of meaning leopard, or more accurately, spotted like a leopard.
Oh.
So it's forked, spotted like a leopard. Sounds a bit random.
It does.
It gets more random. So in light of this, you may be forgiven for thinking that I might be talking about a small cat with some sort of beautiful arrangement of maybe spots, but certainly some sort of patterning.
Holding a garden fork.
Along its flanks, and holding a fork. A trident there, or something, But you'd be wrong. See, the other name for this species, the common name for this species, is panther chameleon. So Latin is not at all where the comparisons drawn with the cat family end for this species. So ancient Greek is where we find the roots for both of those words, panther and chameleon. And starting off with chameleon, coming from the ancient Greek word chameleon, which you could break down as male, like mailing something, eon. But that is in itself a compound of two ancient Greek words, kame, which means ground or on the ground, and then leon, which I think we all know what that is. Yeah, lion. So it basically means lying on the ground.
So where'd you find it? Lying on the ground.
Yeah, but lion as in
yes, I'm aware.
Big growly cat thing. Yeah,
which
and then
couldn't be further from the truth with most chameleon species.
No, not at all. And yet they double down on this by calling it a panther as well, which obviously means big cat. So this is like as far from, I've just elbowed the thing there. This is as far from a big cat as you could probably get really, without getting into like some sort of invertebrate or bacteria or something, I suppose. Yeah. So the species is actually more recently known to humans than I'd first considered. I thought we'd known about it for a fair while, but it was officially described for the first time in 1829 by French naturalist Georges Cuvier.
Oh,
yeah,
he's got a fair old amount of things named after him.
He's got a nice little rogues gallery of animals he's described, but this description was rather brief. I did go online and I tried to find out like how he first described it, like a book entry or something, and unfortunately I could only find one sentence, and that sentence was
he was drunk at the time, didn't know what a lion looked like.
That would be probably far more fitting to why you named it that. Yeah,
his glasses fell off and he guessed.
Well, wrong prescription magnified it. No, but his single line was basically, it has the appearance of many black spots.
I'm going with his glasses fell off because that sounds about right. Okay.
Well, the black continues because interestingly, in later years, he actually would describe them as almost entirely black, from which we can guess that his animals were extremely stressed.
Very stressed, yeah.
Yeah, so that's his description of them essentially. But it was from these initial brief encounters and the original like collections and the private husbandry of people such as Georges Cuvier that interest clearly grew exponentially, because today the panther chameleon is probably one of the most highly sought after, certainly of chameleons, but of reptiles in general, for the pet trade, with their popularity largely due to their kind of robust size, the vibrancy of their coloration, and the ease of breeding them in captivity, because they do breed very well in captivity. And it's not just actually the vibrancy of that. I only mentioned the colors, but the actual contrast in the patterns is pretty spectacular when you're talking about panther chameleons. Although I suppose a lot of chameleons are like that. I do think the panther chameleon is one of the brighter ones. I'm trying to think of some others.
I quite like the Yemen chameleon, or the veiled chameleons is the name for it. And that's, but to be fair, this is the only species of chameleon I've ever worked with. Is the panther chameleon, and their colors, even though the ones I'm working with are relatively young and are only just over 6 months, so they starting to get their colors. Because before that they are kind of colorless. They are stunning already, and certainly the male out of the pair of them that we have is pretty good looking.
I have worked with panther chameleons, Yemen or veiled chameleon, and Jackson's chameleon.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, the Triceratops chameleon. But that one was very, very brief, and I didn't really ever form an opinion other than the fact that they look cool. But people can correct me if you guys have worked extensively with either species, but I found the veiled chameleon to be a little bit grumpy.
I think all chameleons look a bit grumpy, to be honest.
I mean, they look grumpy, but the panther chameleon didn't behave grumpy. I think I worked with in my career, I've worked with 3 of them. Only 2 of them for an extensive amount of time. But yeah, the panther chameleon, standard grumpy chameleon look, but not chameleon. No, sorry, not grumpy behavior. But the veiled chameleon definitely was a grumpy piece of work.
I almost prefer them if they're grumpy. I think that's more fun,
more character, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the panther chameleon creature feature. Do panther chameleons look anything like panthers, or rather big cats?
In that they've got 4 legs, a tail, 2 eyes, a mouth, and ears,
and some sort
they're
of
not even the same kind of ears.
patterning on the flanks.
They're a tetrapod, so
yeah, they are a tetrapod. Yeah, well,
no,
yeah, I was going to say, as Gareth is suggesting, no, not in the slightest. Though I'm sure their prey could certainly relate to, I guess, the sambar deer being stalked, breathing its last as the tiger sinks its teeth into its larynx. Although
I don't really get that from a chameleon.
Chameleons don't really hunt like that, but I'm sure the fear factor might be the same. So no, chameleons are not massive, fast-moving, furry harbingers of ungulate doom, but they are pretty big, at least for chameleons. They can grow up to 50 centimeters long, though females are substantially smaller and lighter than the males, which are far more heavy-duty. Color is largely down to locality, and Drew, who does our artwork, our former co-host, he was actually kind enough to make a happy little compromise for the artwork this week. So he used the amberlobe region, their specific kind of color morph, as kind of the inspiration for his artistic interpretation of panther chameleons, because it kind of serves as a middle ground, to use his words himself. A middle ground between the West Coast Blues and the East Coast Reds.
Those 2 very famous, gangs.
It does sound a little bit like Bloods and Crips, doesn't it? Yeah, it does sound a little bit like gang warfare.
I could just see chameleons slowly grabbing, guns like that.
But how would they pull them with this?
But they can't. That's just it. It's a turf war.
They can hold a knife.
But no one's ever shot anyone. They can hold a knife.
Someone needs to get a cardboard knife cut out and hand it to a chameleon and see how
very
it
slowly comes at you.
That being said, the vibrant colors our artwork displays is more typical of males. Females are often kind of shades of tan, peach, and also bright orange. And this coloration doesn't appear to differ between the regions too much. However, there is an area, and I've forgotten where it is now, so I'm going to kick myself later. But there's an area where the kind of peaches and oranges are more kind of pinky, and that's where you get the pink panther chameleon. And that's not a joke.
No, I know.
That's actually serious. I'm not actually taking the mick. There's a pink panther color morph.
Do you know what?
And it's a natural one.
I think the Pink Panther music fits the movement.
Does.
Of
Yes, it does.
Than it does a cat.
I wonder there's probably some sort of royalties issue with we wouldn't be able to use the music.
Just imagine the music.
If you see any of the videos, and just listen to the music.
Have it to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So actually talking about because we're talking about just now their kind of pincer-like arrangement there for their feet. The toe arrangement of the panther chameleon is typical of chameleon feet, and it's where the generic name furcifer draws its inspiration. So the toes aren't pincers as they might appear. They're actually grouped and fused. So the front 2 feet show 2 toes on the outside and 3 toes facing inward, whereas on the back feet it's 3 toes facing outwards and 2 toes facing inwards, which is a interesting setup. The arrangement gifts the chameleons, as you probably could guess, with a tight grip on the narrowest of perching options, making them fantastic climbers, an ability that's further supported by the presence of sharp claws on the end of each toe.
They're surprisingly sharp, those claws, yeah.
And it is on the end of each toe, so the 3 fused would have 3 claws. It's not just one per kind of fused group. They are sharp. So now you know what you're looking for. Where will you find them? Do you know where panther chameleons come from? I'm
I
assuming
mean,
that you do.
I do now.
Yeah.
To be honest, chameleons had never featured massively on my radar.
Yeah.
Mostly, I'd say because I was working more with invertebrates than other reptiles, and I did put off the collections that I worked at from getting a chameleon for for husbandry reasons, because we didn't have the setups to be able to at that particular point without massively changing things. I was very much up for the idea of having chameleons, but we needed to do a lot of modification of what we had enclosure wise,
Yeah,
I think,
fair
to have
enough.
made it worthwhile. And it was a lot better to have taken in rescues of things like tegus and terrestrial reptiles as opposed to arboreal reptiles, because our setups were better for that. So I tended to put them out of my mind more than anything. But since having worked with them now at the college, yes, I am fully aware. I've done a bit more like of deep diving into them.
That makes me feel a lot better.
Cool.
And I'll tell you why in a minute, but it probably won't surprise people much to find that they don't actually originate from any of the range countries of the various panther species or panthera species that are out there in the world. Now, this is why it makes me feel better, because writing this, I felt that, well, it's kind of weird to say, and still to this day, I don't know the reasons why this is. But when I first started working with panther chameleons, I had no idea that they were from Madagascar.
Okay.
No idea. I just assumed that the Madagascan chameleons would be all the small
The
species.
tiny little dwarf species of
Yeah,
chameleon.
I always assumed that the small species would be, well, not all the small species, but all of Madagascar's species would be small ones. But they don't. They do have some large specimens out there. I worked them a fair few years ago now, so I don't even know why I didn't know the answer to that.
It's one of those things you probably just didn't think of at the time.
Yeah, it wasn't until I started working with them that I looked into them that I actually found that they were from Madagascar. So it came as a bit of a shock. But yeah, I'm not sure why, but there it is. But yes, they come from Madagascar. Specifically, this species comes from the lowland areas to the east and northeast of the island. Here, they inhabit the rainforest to the east and the broken kind of forest savannas towards the northern part of their range. These are areas that are, especially the rainforest, completely hammered by human interference and machines and stuff. But luckily, they are a species that they actually adapt quite well to disturbed and changed landscapes. Unluckily, those sorts of areas also lead panther chameleons to end up on roads and probably coming into contact with people's pets or feral pets, as the case may be. But where in these habitats will you find our colourful little friends is a question of heat, essentially. They are, of course, ectotherms, meaning that they rely on external sources to provide heat. And as such, like most other modern reptiles, do you know if there's any exceptions to this? I'm testing them. I already know the answer.
Well,
obviously,
as in being able to pump up their heat, sort of thing.
As in, can you think of any reptiles that aren't ectotherms?
Oh, yes, partly. I mean, they're not true not truly homeothermic.
I think you're going with the one
tegu.
Yes, well done. So yeah, the Argentine black and white tegu, but also
weirdly,
birds.
I mentioned that like 2 minutes ago. Oh yeah, okay. If we're going down the route of birds,
I trip you up a bit somewhere. I
mean, that's fine. That's fine. If we're going down the route of birds, that's fine.
I wasn't going to include birds, but I wrote it down as a side note.
Mammals,
just in case. But yeah, so basically, like most other modern reptiles, the panther chameleon will have to look for basking spots to seek the sun's warmth in order to amp themselves up. But what makes using this limitation for the chameleon a tricky kind of cheat code for finding them in the wild is actually that they have a pretty sizable thermoneutral zone.
Right.
Now, what that means is the temperature range in which they can comfortably
Inhabit.
function and
Yeah.
thrive and indeed remain active is quite large. It ranges between 24 degrees to 36 degrees Celsius.
That's not bad.
So 12 degrees of difference that they're happy to just chill out in and sit there. So yeah, and that phrase about them kind of being happy to sit there during the day in those kind of temperatures, it's an important one because panther chameleons, they lack the rods and the melanin pigmentation in the eyes
Mm.
to be able to see in the dark, to have like useful functional night vision. So they are a diurnal species, and that's when they will be most active. Now, what adds to the challenge of finding a smallish reptile hanging out in trees and not necessarily needing to bask as often as other reptiles is their social life. So the social life of the panther chameleon is pretty non-existent. Being solitary and fiercely territorial as a species, you're not going to stumble across a mass gathering, and nor will you hear individuals calling to each other, really. At best, what you could hope for is crossing paths with a pair. Now, if the pairing is male-male, you'll see, yeah, you'll see body colors change in a flash as they kind of inflate their bodies, and
It's hilarious when they try and show off how big
Yeah.
and tough
And
the
they-
throat goes out.
they shake on the
Yeah.
perch like this. So yeah, they just try and make themselves look bigger, more dominant, more flashy to try and intimidate their
It's the
competition.
ultimate sort of arching yourself up as much as you possibly can.
Yes.
But they also arch down as well. So they really do sort of spread themselves out
Yeah,
as much as like
they
a
do.
billboard to advertise.
It's one of the weirdest forms of peacocking.
Yeah.
I feel. Now, if that doesn't work and neither of the males back off, it will result in a clash as the two kind of wrestle on top of their perches until one gives up or falls. If, however, you are lucky enough to come across a male or female pairing, you may be, as I say, lucky and see them breeding.
Mm.
Now, this will occur between January and May after they have hit 7 months of age. And it begins with kind of jerking movements of the body, head bobbing, and like rapid displays of bright colors to kind of show off their virility, their health. If this is successful, the female will become gravid as the eggs develop within her for up to 6 weeks. She'll then begin to turn black with a hint of a dark brown or lighter brown, or indeed orange stripes. And this color change is to warn other males off from trying to approach her. And if it doesn't work, she gets fiercely territorial. And she's very quick to temper, and she'll even bite them to keep them off her. So once a successful gestation period has taken place, her clutch will then be unloaded into a burrow type nest that she would have purpose built for the task of safeguarding her eggs, and then she'll leave them, and no further parental care will be undertaken by mum or dad. So yeah, they're not particularly parentally inclined animals.
I don't think any chameleon really is.
No, I don't think chameleons are at all. But yeah, there it is.
So these guys are egg layers then.
They are egg layers.
Oviparous.
Oviparous, yeah.
Yeah, because there are some that are viviparous and ovoviviparous. Sorry. There are some that are ovoviviparous in that they just sort of pop out after hatching internally.
Yeah. No, these ones aren't those. These are
Purely
solid
just
egg layers, yeah. Yeah. But they do have quite large clutches, as we're about to come on to. So the females will likely only live up to 3 years after laying the eggs, in which time they may lay up to 8 clutches, each with up to 40 eggs. The effort to do this is so huge that they think that's the culprit behind females having such a shortened life expectancy.
That seems like a really bad evolutionary adaptation. That
it's
you can
it's
kind of
even in
understand it in
captivity.
males, in the sense that you breed, that's it, like an antechinus, you breed and breed and breed and breed, and then you die, but in a female you kind of expect it to go a little bit longer.
Yeah. What I tell you, what it reminded me of is octopus.
Yeah, that's true.
Although octopus actually do show some actual like effort towards colossal effort towards protecting
Parental
their
care, yeah.
babies. Yeah. Yeah. In any case, those eggs the female produce will develop where they are laid, hatching after 240 days. It's quite a long kind of
Decent period.
incubation
Yeah.
period. So their social life revolves around keeping out of each other's way, except when it comes to mating. And even then, it's a case of do what must be done and then get back to isolation as quickly as possible. They really don't want to hang around with anyone. But
Kind of like the sound of that.
it's-
Just live on a bush and go, no, get away from me.
careful your wife doesn't hear
Yeah, that's true.
this episode. But what are they doing when they're out on their own, aside from occasionally basking in the sun? Well, panther chameleons, like their namesakes, are ambush predators. They hide in their natural cover that's afforded to them by their environment, waiting for prey to pass unknowingly within range of their spring attacks.
Mm.
Now, whilst they're hiding there, they'll be moving their eyes independently of each other, I should say, for a full 360-degree field of vision, looking for a wider range of Madagascan invertebrates. I couldn't find exactly what species they feed on. However, there was a lot of inclination towards predatory species that will be out on the branches and in the trees hunting themselves.
Yeah.
And active kind of consumers of live plants. So
Okay.
we're not talking about Madagascan hissing cockroaches and such that will be on the forest floor underneath the leaf litter, eating dead or decaying debris, basically. We're
But
talking
I
about
imagine they'd be
more
quite
active
happy to
ones.
take things like flower cockroaches, which are up in the branches,
Yes,
and
I
a lot
imagine
more
they would
brightly
do.
coloured.
I also don't imagine that they'd pass up
I
too
can-
many things that would be found on the first floor if they found themselves down there.
I can tell you now, they do like a cockroach nymph.
Yeah,
We have fed them those every now and again, and they really like them.
yeah, but I
And
imagine they do.
locusts. I mean, that's about as close to a active plant-consuming invertebrate as you can get.
Yeah,
Bang on, sort of, crickets and caterpillars and all that sort of stuff.
yes. I was also wondering if they take any of the Madagascan mantids.
Probably, if they're out, you've got these two creatures that are slow stalk ambush hunters
Yeah.
that both walk in a weird way, except one's going to eat the other.
And if you're a tardigrade at seeing that, it must be like seeing King Kong versus Godzilla. Yeah. Anyway, unlike their namesakes, the springing attacks that I mentioned do not involve the legs springing the body into some sort of explosive action towards the prey. In the case of chameleons, that explosive springing action of activity originates in the head and forces the tongue out like a pole. Or probably what's more akin to than a pole is probably like a spearfishing dart.
Yeah.
Because it's still attached and you reel it back in. So at the opportune moment when the prey is in range, muscles that enclose the hyoid bone, but it's like a specialized version of the hyoid bone, they contract in the mouth there, squeezing that bone. As such, the bone is kind of forced to kind of shoot out, like as if you're holding something super slippery and you grip it and it screws out. And then that bone shooting forward like that ballistically projects the tongue out, and that tongue can cover 1.5 times the body length of the chameleon. Now, an interesting little factoid is the smaller species of chameleon and also the younger specimens, they actually have the ability to fling their tongues out even further, up to twice the length of their body. And when we talk about body, I'm talking from like snout to butt, not including the tail there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this tongue shoots out with incredible power. In fact, it achieves a G-force, which is a acceleration measurement of about 40, just over 40 Gs. That's pretty fast.
If you were sat on the end of that, you'd feel it.
Yeah. So at this range, with that rate of acceleration, we're talking about a tongue that can make contact with its prey in under 1/7 of a second. So very, very quick action. The final moments of this unfortunate insect's life are spent trapped to the tongue by way of a honey-like substance, a saliva that is about 400 times thicker than the saliva of us humans. And the final moments of that insect bring us quite nicely to the final moments of this creature feature.
As it's pulled in. Do you know what? The weird thing is, some of the students, when we've had them in the various rooms feeding things, I said, hold that there, and you'll take it from your hand. They actually found that boring. I can't believe that. I said, this is like the most interesting animal in here to feed.
That's
There are so
crazy.
many animals in this room that are just plate of food in front of it. That's that's all you need to do. But hold this, and it will shoot its tongue out and grab it. Some of them are like, oh, what's that?
And they've seen it and they still find it boring.
I was amazed.
Jeez.
But they were also finding the snake eating interesting, which I think snakes eating is the most boring thing in the world.
No, I think it's interesting. I don't think it's exciting, but it's interesting. That initial explosion.
Yeah, but most captive snakes are just.
That's because they need to be excited about their food. Need to really kind of wriggle that food, really make it look like the mouse is alive.
Oh, I know, but a lot of them are just like,
they'll give you what you give them.
Yeah.
You get out what you put in.
I'm not putting a mouse costume on. But yeah, no, I find it absolutely fascinating. I love feeding them.
Chameleons are great.
Yeah,
I like chameleons. It's just we had a very, very ill chameleon in one place I worked. Had a good innings, but eventually like age-related health issues took their toll. And I have to say that was like I was more attached to like my cats and stuff and that. But I have to say the saddest euthanasia I've ever seen was a chameleon.
Yeah.
That was not a good day.
They're unfortunately an animal that far too often people go out and buy on an impulse, thinking that they're going to be easier to keep, but they're an animal that require an awful lot of care, more specialized care than a bearded dragon or even something like a monitor lizard, because you didn't actually mention in this, but they only drink from water droplets on the plants.
That's right. Yeah.
You can't just put a bowl of water in with them, because they are such arboreal animals that bowl of water means nothing to them.
Yeah,
they need to drink
it.
the droplets off the tree or whatever. So you've got to have a good amount of misting, a good amount of spraying. They're very susceptible to MBD, metabolic bone disease.
That's correct.
More so than a lot of other reptiles.
And on the subject of spraying, you got to be really careful with chameleons in general. But one of the things with panther chameleons, keeping them in captivity, is that you have to keep them sprayed to provide those water droplets that Gareth's talking about. You also have to keep them sprayed for humidity levels.
Yeah.
But only during the day. At night, that temperature and that humidity have to drop.
Yeah, that's true.
And not allowing for that change is something that kind of sets chameleons and their owners down the wrong path from the outset. And it does actually bring to light like that. I feel like generally UK zoos and European zoos do very well with a wide variety of different taxa. And like there's a lot of good husbandry practice out there in the kind of private pet keeping world. But I do think that more attention needs to be paid to the difference between night and day for all species, and the difference between seasons.
Yeah.
When I used to talk to zoo managers, not all zoo managers, but a couple come to mind, about having a kind of a season of plenty for the cats, and then a season where things aren't so plentiful for the cats, they'd look at me like I'm mad. And it's like, but that it will reflect better on their health long term. And I think the same can be said for all species. Like you got to keep that humidity up during the day for these panther chameleons, and then cooler temperatures and a complete humidity drop off at night.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
I could have gone into detail about the pet side of things, like I did a little bit for corn snakes, but I thought like there were other more interesting
to other
things.
ones.
Yeah.
But
more interesting things to talk about, really. And also, this won't be the last chameleon species I cover, so there's plenty of time to talk about that kind of thing.
the one thing I had not seen before, because like I say, this is the first chameleon that I've ever worked with, is them shedding, which is hilarious compared to a lot of other reptiles which have more defined scales, and when they shed, it's usually just a big chunk of almost like plate armor falling off sort of thing. They're very much like they're wearing a pair of pajamas, and sort of almost like leopard geckos, because leopard geckos have got very dainty skin as well.
Yeah.
And the ones that were shedding the other day, just trying to use those hands, those sort of almost Spock-like hands, to try and get these bits off, and trying to really reach. He was really sort of like struggling to pull these bits off, and it was just very humorous to watch this animal just sort of like, come on, get that off. But they've really grown on me as a species.
I do like panther chameleons.
You can definitely see the appeal of those. Yeah.
And the coloration. Drew's done really well with the artwork. I mean, his artwork's always on point, but
well, that's really now up in our T-mail shop as well.
Yes, the Panther Chameleon shirt goes live with this episode.
Oh, so it's an accompanying piece.
It is.
Oh, should we move into our emails then?
Yeah, let's do it.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right, well, we're into this week's emails. And we're going to start things off with last week's question, which was a poll based on our chimp episode, which I'm a little bit disappointed with, Aaron.
No.
Mostly because the one that I had in the race got no votes. It broke down with orangutans getting 50% of the vote. Gorillas getting the other 50% of the vote.
Which is exactly what we predicted, really.
Yeah, and chimpanzees and bonobos getting nothing.
Yeah.
Which I thought, I almost felt like skewing it myself and throwing in, like rigging it a little bit to get some chimp votes.
I was going to say that, I mean, part of the issue is that we don't allow ourselves to vote on this.
Yeah.
Although I feel the line is blurred a bit with Drew, because Drew was always part of this he can't vote thing, but now he's not a host. He does vote, I've noticed.
Yeah.
But he's still actively a member of the... So maybe we should be voting.
I don't know.
But I would have voted for chimpanzee, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yes. So we might have possibly skewed the results. Not enough to win it, but... So yes, orangutan and gorilla are the ones that basically came out on top. Although they are drawed with each other. So I almost feel we should run another unofficial poll in the background.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gorilla versus orangutan.
Gorilla versus orangutan. Who's your favorite?
Yeah.
Let us know your thoughts on that one for next week. So yeah, we'll move on from that to this week's question, which is going to be, what's your favorite reptile? Based on Aaron talking about the panther chameleon. What's your favorite reptile, Aaron? It's a hard one because there are an awful lot of options that you could go down the route of.
I think we need to narrow this down a bit, actually. Let's say extant only.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so extant only. And it's not that... I don't think it's that difficult when you bring it down to that, because it's probably Asian water monitor.
Okay.
Because I might be quite... I think I might be quite vanilla in my even though I'm super keen on reptiles, I might be quite vanilla in my preference, not in my preferences, but in my favorites, because it would be things like Asian water monitor, Komodo dragon, which is just a bigger version of the
Asian water monitor, yeah.
American alligator, saltwater crocodile, and I mean the fifth one. There might be a few contenders, but yeah, no, for sure. I think my favorite is Asian water monitor. One reptile that I've always wanted to try keeping as a pet is the Aki's monitor.
They're cute. It's so much fun.
I just love monitor lizards. I think are some of the most vanilla and yet interesting reptiles. I love monitor
Not something
lizards.
You're really going to be able to have as a pet, I'd imagine, Aaron, because your animal collection in your house reads like a smorgasbord to a large monitor lizard.
Yes, it does.
You have a rabbit, 2 cats, and a snake.
And a snake, yeah.
And a small child.
And a small
all
child.
of which feature very much on Komodo dragon menus. It would be bad idea to have one of those in the house.
I don't think I'd want one of those, or even an Asian water monitor. I think it's just Akis. There's a couple of species I'd consider that are slightly bigger, but even then I wouldn't consider them big monitor lizards. And yeah, it's not. Anyway, it's not something that I have any interest in doing right now. Anyway, it's just something I've always wanted to try.
So I'm going to break this down for you and go favorite lizard.
Oh, okay.
Favorite turtle/tortoise.
Chelonian.
Yeah. And favorite snake. And then one final other one. So I'll go favorite lizard. It's got to be the Fijian banded iguana, because they are absolutely stunning looking little iguanas, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with this lime green down their body, with nice sort of turquoise blue stripes going up their body. They're just chef's kiss, perfection. Really nice species to look after. And I might say I managed to breed them as well, the ones that I worked with.
That's cool.
Favorite Chelonian? It's a toss-up really between sulcata tortoises, which I just like because they're the biggest tortoise that I've worked with, and they've got personality, in tons. But also alligator snapping turtle, which is another one that I worked with, which is just stunners. Favorite snake? That's gonna probably go to something like the death adder, because it's a really pretty snake that just sits there and waits for its food to come to it. Oh, and then I suppose I should throw crocodilian in there. It's obviously the alligator, because it's just so cool. And the final one is Tuatara, which doesn't fit.
I knew you were going there. Yeah.
Well, it's a hard choice of what do I choose of the rhynchocephalians. There's only one left, so got to be Tuatara in there as well.
Yeah, good choices. I didn't think to break it down like that, and I'm not going to do it now.
Fair enough.
But yeah, no, good choices.
Oh yeah, we've even got the Tuatara on there. So let us know what your favorite choice of reptile is in the comments on our Facebook page, where you can get in contact with us. You can also get in contact with us via our email address as well, and I believe, Aaron, you've got our email for this week.
Yeah, that's the second time I've hit the cabinet this week.
You've been,
yes, I've got the email this week, and it comes to us from one of our Patreon supporters, Jen Greenhall, who writes, "Hello, you lovely lot. Just thought I would let you know that TetZooCon, which I have been banging on about, has evolved into DinoCon for the future."
Has it?
Apparently so.
Oh.
From what I can gather, the next one will be in Exeter.
Oh, we gotta go.
Yes.
We gotta go.
But they have stalls which you could take the Nat History cupboard stand to and maybe spot on the stage.
Oh, we gotta go.
We got at least visit. She says, just sharing in case.
Just sharing in case.
Knowing full well that's gonna get Gareth excited.
Let's just dangle some bait. Oh.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a good idea.
That sounds really good.
This is something we could do. Even if we just turned up just to visit, but took our
no, I think we should.
Our
I think we should aim for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
She has sent us a link, so
good.
we will do that. Yeah, we'll have a look at
that
that link. Thank you very much for that, Jen.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Jen, as well. If you want to get in contact with us and tell us where we can go to various different events,
I was going to say, careful how you word that.
Tell us where to go,
where we can go.
Yes, I've been told that many times. You can do so by sending us an email at the nathistorykupboard@gmail.com. But as Aaron was saying, Jen is one of our fantastic Patreons, and to get involved in that, Aaron's going to tell us all about that, in fact.
Yeah, that's right. So every week we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters. Now, these are the cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we are obviously grateful beyond words. And those people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick to Nick, and Justin Knife. Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us here in the Natural History Cupboard in plenty of different ways that you'll no doubt see as we get into the next season of the podcast as we approach the end of this year. But yeah, we really can't thank you enough. We do appreciate everything that all of our cupboard dwellers do to support us and help kind of spread the word, whether that's through watching, I remember to say it this time, listening, sharing, subscribing, or even writing a nice positive review. But if you do feel that we've earned it and you're considering joining our Patreon, you can do so via 2 tiers. That's the Animal Ambassador tier and the Nature Nerds tier. And you can find more information on those on the Patreon site itself. But with that said, once again, just want to say a massive thank you to our Patreon supporters.
Yes, massive thank you indeed. So as Aaron was saying, you can get involved by liking, subscribing, commenting on whatever you are viewing us or listening to us on. You can also go to our T-mail shop where we have our fantastic merchandise that Drew has done a bit of a reshuffle of some of the artwork and some of the available bits and pieces that are on there. So feel free to go and check that out. It's a really good way to support the podcast and also look really good as well, I think.
Yeah, the shirts are great. I mean, I've got a Tyrannosaurus Rex one and the Linharaptor Exquisitus one.
That's
the latter of which I'm wearing. That's the one I tend to wear the most nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're nice quality and they're eco-friendly too, aren't they?
Yes, and when we did go to the Lyme Regis Fossil Festival, we did get a lot of people asking about them.
Where we got, unfortunately, not asking about the podcast, just asking,
asking
where t-shirts come from.
Yeah, that's all that matters. But yes, go and check that out if you get a chance. So that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode. Although before we go, we should point out that next week is our Halloween episode. It's our spooky species special, which will be, this is our 4th year doing this one now. So we've got a nice little back catalogue of Halloween-based species with spooky names coming up. And we've also got a spooky special guest. We've brought in Phil Barber to basically go over one of his favorite species as well. And you'll get to see just how well our costumes turned out in the end. Aaron's has got an interesting twist to it, but we'll let that speak for itself next week. So come join us next week for our Halloween episode, which should come out just in time for Halloween, I believe.
Yes,
so, yeah,
it will do.
Yeah, so that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode. So big thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, and thank you guys at home.
Yes, a big thank you to you guys at home, wherever you are joining us from, and we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Bye. One does not simply change colour to match his environment. In fact, they don't do it at all for that reason.
Just to annoy French naturalists.
Yes, exactly.